Thank you for joining me on this review of the Suzuki GS550E inline 4-cylinder, 8-valve, 4-stroke motorcycle. This particular specimen is a 1978. Suzuki made the GS550E model from 1977 to 1979. The Suzuki GS550 would live on through the L, E, and ES models, but only on the E would you find the kickstart and the VM round slide Mikuni carburetors. The good handling chassis and reliably over-engineered engine of the GS550 made it more ideal for sport riding versus the other Japanese offerings. The first thing you'll notice is that there's a lot of things on this bike that remind you of the GS750, and that's true. The GS550 was equipped with several things from the 750. The rear wheel suspension consisted of a needle-bearing swing arm with 2 oil hydraulically dampened spring struts. The spring base is adjustable in 5 positions. The suspension travel is 85 millimeters. The tire size at the time were equipped with 3.75-inch H-rated, which are biased 18-inch rear tires. Front of the bike, the GS550E has an oil hydraulically dampened telescopic front fork. The stanchion diameter is 35 millimeters. The spring deflection is 150 millimeters. And the front tire size, it came equipped with a 3.25H, which is biased 19-inch tire. In 1978, the Suzuki GS came in 2 options, the 550 and the 550E. The main difference of the 550 and the 550E was the E was equipped with aluminum alloy rims, where the standard model was equipped with spoked wheels. The GS550E was marketed as the Canyon Cat and really was a middleweight, so there was only 2 options in the time of its release, which was the GS400, which quickly became the GS425, and the GS750, the epitome of superbike. At the time, all of the GS series motorcycles reflected a big commitment by Suzuki to give their bikes stout, rigid chassis, making them top-notch compared to the competitors. The 550 was no different. The heavily gusted steering head produced a 29-degree rake and 4.72 inches of trail. Both the rigidity of the frame and its geometry resulted in exceptional handling. At high speed especially, the GS maintains its composure, unlike its competitors from Yamaha or Honda. The GS550E was equipped with both a kickstarter and an electric starter. The GS550E was also fully equipped with both high-low beams with option to turn lights on or off, 4-way turn indicators, a very easy-to-read instrument cluster, and a horn. The carburetor is equipped with a choke lever for cold starts. Also, the petcock is vacuum operated, so there's no need to accidentally leave it on. You just switch it to on, reserve, or prime, and you'll never overflow the carburetors unless you leave it on prime. So leave it on, and set and forget, and just ride away. 550 was equipped with a cable-operated clutch, and it's a bit tough because it uses a worm gear actuation behind the sprocket cover. Do those brakes look familiar? You're right, those are the same brake size and caliper size as the GS750. The GS550E was equipped with both front and rear disc brakes that use a single piston to stop. Electronic components such as your fuse box, you have to remove the seat, and I'll flip it up. There you'll find your air box. Quickly remove your side panel, and then you'll see the fuse box. It uses tube-type fuses, anywhere from 10 to 15 amps. The Suzuki GS550 was a 12-volt electric system that used 3 legs that ran off the stator. The 550E used both separate regulator and rectifier units, so unfortunately it is a weak point on these Suzuki GS models, so if you own one of these things, keep an eye out for those charging systems. The true gem of the GS550E is its inline 4-cylinder engine with hemispherical cylinder head design. Suzuki engineers chose to use roller bearing points at several places in the engine's bottom end. This only added to its long-term reliability and longevity. Dual overhead cams and 8 valves helped the little 550E become quite a revvy, fun little engine. The GS550E may only have made 49 wheel horsepower, but it managed to transfer those ponies through a 6-speed transmission and a 15-plate oil bath clutch basket. 550 inline 4-cylinder engine is inherently noisy due to its straight cut primary gear system. Add all these things together and you have an engine that is pretty much bulletproof and happily screams into its red line. The Suzuki GS550E has a very easy to read instrumentation cluster. Included is a very rarely seen for this vintage gear indicator. The clocks have a traditional tachometer that reads to 12,000 RPM and a speedometer that reads to 140 miles per hour. Suzuki GS550E got the catchphrase of the Canyon Cat due to the fact that it only weighed 430 pounds and had such a lively little engine. With its over-robust frame and great suspension components found from the GS750, this bike was a true canyon ripper. In earnest, for the bike's vintage, it actually handles very, very well. And you'd be surprised, compared to other bikes of its vintage like the BMW R Series motorcycles, Harley-Davidson Sportsters, and even some of the other UJMs, the Suzuki GS bikes were just top-notch in their handling. The good handling chassis and reliably over-engineered engines made the four-cylinder GS bikes ideal platforms for motorcycle racing. Although nothing to write home about on its 0 to 60 performance for today's standards, the GS550E brought remarkable value, considering that it was faster than the Sportster 1000cc of its time. Unfortunately, the GS550E did not come equipped with a fuel gauge. However, it did come with a generously large fuel tank, 4.75 gallons. The GS550E prefers 87 octane fuel. Economy ranges depending on riding conditions, but as an inline four-cylinder, it's not overly efficient. Generally, I see anywhere from 45 to 50 miles per gallon. While filming this video, I actually achieved 46 miles per gallon. The Suzuki GS550E just bleeds nostalgia. I have multiple times have folks come up and tell me how their first motorcycle was a GS550 and how they just traveled the country with it before they could afford a Harley. As a millennial, I've never experienced these things. In fact, this motorcycle is older than me. But it helps me get transported to a time where things were simpler, where freedom really meant getting on the motorcycle. Who cares if you're riding all your gear? Who cares if you had a couple of beers? Riding was the epitome of freedom. Suzuki wanted a piece of that pie in that market and really aimed high when they brought out the GS550. In fact, even the whole GS line really was the epitome and the beginning of what became the modern Japanese motorcycles of today. I throw my leg over my Suzuki GS550E. I am brought back to a time when there wasn't ADV bikes, when there wasn't sport bikes. There was just motorcycles, and the universal Japanese motorcycle reigned supreme. Brand new to the market, the Suzuki GS550E made its way into everybody's hearts and minds as a piece of everlasting nostalgia. The fact that this old inline four-cylinder engine kicks over the first time and still happily revs to its red line, eagerly eating and anticipating turns, just a testament of the manufacturing prowess the Japanese had back in the late 70s and the early 80s. The inline four-cylinder engine is timeless, and the GS550E encapsulates what riding a UJM back then was all about. Revvy, maybe not the fastest, but dead-stead reliable. This thing would never die. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed my review of the GS550E. It's definitely a motorcycle that you need to have, or at least get a leg over. Keep a shiny side up out there. Best.